Hello, happy Friday. Welcome to another week of the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast, where we're having open and honest conversations about investing in property in a way that doesn't just create cash flow, but also creates freedom from those who have been there and done it. So from our own experience of doing over £17 million of deals, raising over £7 million of finance, and doing that whilst travelling the world. And this week, my special guest is Kim Opszala, who is a fellow freedom seeker and has also spent a good chunk of time travelling around Europe in her motorhome, or I think she calls it a camper van actually. So on this episode we're talking about structure versus freedom, and how to ultimately be able to travel and have that location freedom without your business falling apart. So a really fantastic episode. So without further ado, here's myself and Kim. Hello, Kim.
Hello.
I am so excited to have you on the podcast today. You are a fellow, obviously, property investor, but also massive travel nut as well. Also traveling around in a camper van for a large part of your year. I just feel like we are kindred spirits. And I'm so excited just to have a conversation about how that's all kind of happened for you and the lessons that you've had along the way. I just think you are such an amazing inspiration for what's possible in property. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And as you say, I think there's so many things we're aligned on in terms of, property, travel, having those freedoms. And I'm excited to talk about it.
It's awesome. So maybe let's start off with the important stuff. What camper van do you have?
That isn't what I thought you were going to ask. So we've got it's a Mercedes Sprinter, a long wheelbase, that it's the royal Mike converted into a camper van. Yeah, so it sleeps the three of us, Mike, my husband, who I'm in business with, and our little boy, who's now almost 5, but was sort of just turned 2 when we first started doing this. So yeah.
And what was it? Was it something you always knew that you wanted to do? Where did it come from, the idea?
It wasn't. It was COVID. It was COVID that kind of planted the idea. Rewind to sort of 2020, the very first lockdown. We had a newborn, and we went into sort of lockdown. Mike was furloughed, so we just I suppose unexpectedly had a lot of time on our hands, a lot of time together as a family, which was actually really nice. But yeah, that's where the idea stemmed from. It was kind of, I don't even know how I first saw, I must have seen something maybe on social media and just thought, oh, van life sounds really cool, and looked into it more and more. And within a year, we'd bought a van, and then a year later, we'd sold our house and we're on the road.
Amazing. And so how much of your time have you spent in the van then since you got it? How long were you you a bit of blend of both now, right?
Exactly. So for the past 2.5 years, we did 90 days on, 90 days off. So, we'd travel Europe for 90 days, we'd come back for the 3 months, and then we'd travel again. Our last trip was in July this year. And our son started school in September. So we're in a funny transition period at the moment where we can't do 90 days on and off. We did debate homeschooling and just continuing this, but we decided to go the conventional route, school. So yeah, it's going to look a bit different going forward, because we've only got school holidays, and we're sort of still working out what that's going to look like. But we will still be doing van travels as much as possible. And yeah, we traveled to, I think it was over 25 countries in the end in that 2.5 year period. And it was fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. I want to dig into it more, but let's just give a bit of context on the property stuff. What is it that you guys do in property, and let's start that. What do you guys do in property?
Yeah, so we predominantly invest in HMOs at the moment. So we've got a portfolio mainly in Milton Keynes and Northampton, where we were based until recently, until we sold our house and moved into a camper van. So we have a portfolio of student and professional HMOs. We've also got blocks of flats in the Midlands. And we're currently looking at commercial property. We're looking to diversify a bit after having spent the past sort of 5 years concentrating solely on HMOs. We're continuing to grow the HMO portfolio. And if planning goes through, we've got another two projects in the pipeline, and we'll be at 60 units sort of early next year. So yeah, that keeps us busy.
Amazing. And you do that with your own money, with investors' money? Like, how does that side of it work?
Yes, so we started out with our own money. We sort of refinanced our own home and bought the first property. And then since 2018, we've been working with private investors. So the usual way that we do it is they invest the purchase price. So they will invest the entire purchase price, and they'll take a first charge, sort of step in the place of the bank. And then we fund the refurbishment works. So we always have our own money in every deal. And that means, if on the refinance at the end, we don't pull out all of the money, it's our money that's left in. And that's how we've worked, since 2018, and continue to grow that way.
Really nice. And so how that's what people's questions always is. How did you manage to travel Europe for 2.5 years and keep all of that going?
Yeah, so do you know, it was a lot of trial and error. I'm not going to pretend that we sailed off into the sunset in the camper and it all kind of worked out. There was a lot of learning things as we went. We had a portfolio, we had an established portfolio when we left. We've always used virtual assistants, overseas virtual assistants. So we had that administrative support, but we were still very much involved in the day-to-day running. And what we found, I'd say, for the first 12 months of traveling is that we were able to run the portfolio well. We didn't really have any major hiccups during that time in terms of us not being in the country. But we didn't grow. Our kind of stumbling block was that we couldn't source and do that from afar. So we kind of worked on that on the second half of the 2.5 years of traveling. And we secured 2 deals whilst traveling on our last trip, one of which is completed, one's in legal. So we kind of had to tweak our systems, tweak the team in order to be able to do that. But now we're in a position where we can source and manage from anywhere.
Amazing. And so what does that team look like then for you to be able to do that?
Yeah, so we have a UK-based VA that works sort of part-time in the business and is the first port of call for tenants, really. So they deal with tenant issues, maintenance requests, all very administrative kind of stuff. And then we still have a Filipino VA that sort of supports me more so with sort of, social media, investor comms, the sort of creative side of things, and admin as well. A little bit of life admin as well, to be honest. And then we have a property manager who works part-time in the business, and he's physically in our investment areas. So she does anything physical: inspections, fire alarm checks, check-ins, check-outs. And that team of 3 really supports us. She will do viewings and do really thorough viewing reports, which has allowed us to be able to make offers and secure deals whilst we're not in the country.
Amazing. So what would you say has been your biggest lesson then? Like, was there clearly some highs and lows that go along with doing all of this stuff and doing it remotely? Tell me, some of the main lessons that came out from it for you.
Yeah, I think one of the things is definitely mindset for us. As I mentioned, the first year we didn't buy anything. We didn't grow the business as such. We did complete on one purchase, but it was a purchase lease option, so it had been in the pipeline for a few years. And it was us that stopped that from happening. We sort of thought, oh, we can't buy something we haven't seen. And it's that whole mindset change of, well, actually, our property manager is very experienced, been in the business for a few years now. We trust her opinion. And a lot of it was kind of us kind of getting out of our own way and sort of being like, we can do this. As I mentioned, we had team changes as well. And I think we just became more open-minded as the travels went on. I think I'm a bit of a control freak and sort of, it actually forced me to sort of let go of some things and, not be so anal about
Yeah,
things,
I can
sometimes.
totally relate. Yeah, I think I think we're very similar, or at least we both very similar in the past in terms of like organized, methodical, like things to go how we like them to go. And I think that would be interesting to talk about with traveling around in a van, because it doesn't go how you want it to go. And like that, tell me what the van has taught you about being able to like let go of that control.
Yeah, I think it's just I'm a lot more relaxed because there is, things go wrong and you can deal with them. And I think before this, I would have, I tried to plan for every eventuality. And in with van life, you can't. And I think I read in your book one of the funny stories about the printer and not being able to print something. And we had a very similar situation. We had to sign something with wet ink, and the printer that we brought along with us didn't work, like it had run out of ink or something like that. And then we were in the middle of Italy, and like no one spoke English, and we were trying to find somewhere to print a document, and that would have really stressed me out before. But we found a way, we found a little print shop and got it sorted. And I think, yeah, it's definitely changed the way that I am in terms of being more relaxed. I still plan as much as possible, but you kind of realize that there's other options. You will find a way. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, I think the other thing that we had, so we had like what we thought was like a very simple planning application. We're increasing a 6-bedroom HMO to a 7-bedroom HMO. We'd already been through planning once with it. We're just increasing the bedroom, but we're also increasing um, the communal space. We're creating a fantastic house. And it got called to planning committee. And we were given 2 weeks' notice that we physically had to speak at planning committee. So that was fun and games of trying to find, I can't remember where we were, but we ended up driving to Poland and me flying from Krakow home for like less than 24 hours and then flying back just to attend this planning committee. So it's things like that, you can't plan for that. And it makes a great story now, but it was very stressful at the time.
Yeah. And have you guys had the same thing? Like, because with us, with our insurance with the van, like we couldn't just leave it. You can't just leave it in Europe and just both of you fly back. Was that the same issue
No.
for you guys? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I flew back, and yeah, so we can't leave it anywhere. And to be honest, we haven't had a situation where we've had to do that. But yeah, it's just a perfect example of, you're lying on a beach, sort of living your best life, and then get an email from the planning officer. It's like, oh, we need to
Everything
get
changes.
back.
And so what would you say with the van then? Tell us some of the more like hairy experiences. Like when has it not gone to plan with like what the travel plans have been, and how did you handle it?
Yeah, so I think when we first started, we were a bit naive and sort of, I remember our first trip, and it must have been in the first few weeks, I'd read about this amazing coastal cliff top drive that in the north of Spain. Um, and we just had the worst weather, and it was the scariest experience. It was sort of like 60% incline hills in a huge van. And the weather, it was just, there was like thunderstorms. And yeah, I think that was probably the worst experience. We had a lorry reverse into us whilst we were on our way back. Yeah, we've had a few things, but mostly it's been fine. We're like you, we wild camp. I much prefer to sort of just stop somewhere. You get the best spots, don't you? You just showed me your sea view that you're at the moment. And so we've had a couple of occasions where, you sort of wake up in the night and you realize you're not in the best spot and have to move. But on the whole, the the good times completely outweigh the few sort of hairy experiences that we've had.
And to tell us what like the 2.5 years, you say 25 countries that you went to, like
So
what was the itinerary? Just tell us like broadly, like how did it go?
yeah, so every 90 days we would kind of plan where we wanted to go. So the first trip we did sort of northern Spain, Portugal, down to southern Spain. We kind of just did a big loop. Um, but then the second trip, I think we went a bit further afield. So we went to Italy, um, the mainly Italy. The third trip we did, I think probably was my favorite. We went back to Spain, but we island hopped, so we got lots of ferries. So we went to Mallorca, we went to Sardinia, then across to Italy and Croatia. It was a lot of driving. We covered a lot of miles in that trip, but it was fantastic. And actually, for example, Sardinia, they are very van friendly. You'll know there are certain countries where they just don't really like camper vans, don't like wild camping. But Sardinia was just, we were literally parked on the beach. And yeah, nobody bothered us. Nobody was bothered by the van, and it was fantastic. So yeah, we then, I think after that trip, we did sort of mainland Europe, France, sort of Switzerland, Czech Republic, Hungary, sort of more central, Netherlands. Yeah, and our last trip, we went just to France, went to the south of France, for sort of 6 weeks, which was lovely. Yeah.
Wow. Just what would you, if you could have told your like past self that that's the life that you could have had for the last few years, like what was the old you say?
Yeah, I would never have imagined it. And I think one of the things that a lot of people, I suppose, would hold them back is having a child. Like, we had a 2-year-old with us, and a lot of people are like, oh, what's it like traveling with a little one? And actually, I think the younger he was, the better it was. He just loved, waking up in different sites. Obviously, the weather is amazing. And it's just given him great experiences. He's very, people that meet him say, he's so resilient, not resilient. I can't think of the word, but he's just kind of really laid back, and, he's, well, I'm biased, but he's fab. But yeah, I think the travels just really helped shape him. And I still do fight with myself some days about whether or not we should just take him out of school and do it full time. But at the moment, I think the social aspect of being at school and having friends is more important than us traveling. But jury's out on whether that'll be yeah, we might change our mind.
The social aspect was the main thing that put you off, basically saying that's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, because I think, and you'll know this, the majority of the people that we met on our travels were sort of retirees. We
Yes.
didn't meet a lot of young families like us. So he didn't have a lot of children to play with. We're obviously traveling outside of school times, so we weren't traveling in the school holidays. So yeah, he didn't have as many sort of chances to make friendships or socialize. And I do think, he's an only child, so I think it's important. And we put him in preschool, and he just thrived and loved it. So we just thought, for now, I think that's the best option.
Oh, well, it sounds like you made the most of it when he was, in that preschool period. And
Exactly,
like it
that's
was
it.
like the world of good. And yeah, it's really nice to have someone, come on, have a conversation, because obviously it is that Dave and I don't have kids, so it's really nice to hear, your experience of having travel around with a small child. Like, what's like, how does it work? Like, how did you make it work with the three of you, like bedtimes, and tell us about what life
Yeah,
is like.
again, that was sort of a work in progress. One thing that I sort of said about the van conversion was that we needed it to be completely self-contained. So toilet, shower, when you've got a toddler, potty training, that sort of thing. The thought of having a van that didn't have, a full kitchen, toilet, shower just wouldn't have worked. So we had everything on board, which allowed us to be able to wild camp. But yeah, I think because you're in warm countries, warm climates, we spent very little time in the van. You're out and about every day. We're looking at we do like the city stops as well. So we'll stay near to a city and get the train in. So, you are on top of each other all the time. And a lot of our friends sort of say I couldn't spend that much time in that such a confined space with my other half and the kids. but it worked really well for us. We just got used to it, and yeah, you just kind of we have zones, so the bed's at the back. So luckily our little boy's a very good sleeper. So, he'd be shattered from a day of doing whatever we're doing, and he'd just go to sleep at the back. And the front is more of a like lounge area, dining area. So we were able to, we can watch a film, work. So yeah, it works really well. Yeah, just reminiscing now about
Yeah, watching you just drift off like, oh, it's so good. So you mentioned work. Like, what was your like essentials for being able to I guess maybe potentially the first year was slightly different to the second year in terms of what you were doing work wise. So, yeah,
Yeah,
what was the essentials for the work in the van? What did you have to have in place?
I think good internet. So we had like a mini Wi-Fi router, and a SIM card from England, but it had unlimited EU roaming. So
Yep.
we were able to, log on. We both had our laptops. As I said, we had a printer, which failed the one time we did need it, but we had a printer. And that's it, to be honest. Like, our whole business is paperless. We don't, everything's on our cloud drive. Our tenant management system's online. We both have iPads and MacBooks. And yeah, we kind of just had that, and the business we could run. I think the only problem we had is, like I say, when you get a conveyancer that wants wet ink signatures, and then you physically need to print something, and you've got to physically post it in some tracked way from overseas, and I think that's the only hurdle we had business wise. Luckily, we've built the business. We had built it for quite a few years before we left, so we have electricians, plumbers, handyman, and we're able to deal with any issues as they arose, as and when they did.
Amazing. So what would you say if someone was in your position, like if, let's take the clock back, like say 4 or 5 years, like what did you have to do to get the property business ready for you to be able to go off and live that life?
Yeah, I think, you have to outsource. You could run your business without a team in place, but you wouldn't enjoy your travels. You'd be tied to your laptop and working all the time. And I think, I had one trip in particular where, um, I can't remember the circumstance. I think one of my virtual assistants was sick, and something else happened, and I spent a lot of the trip working, and I really resented it. I was kind of like, oh, I'm away, and I'm not going to the beach. I'm having to sit and work for a few hours. So I think having a team in place so you can enjoy your travels, that's the whole point, is really important. And even though when we started our property business, the end goal wasn't for us to travel, the end goal was just, what a lot of property investors, it's financial freedom and sort of time freedom. I was working 100-hour weeks as a lawyer in a large law firm, and that wasn't the lifestyle I wanted. So okay, I get into property, but you can quite quickly end up with a new job. I'd sort of created another job. So yes, I had the financial freedom from being a lawyer, but I basically worked. I didn't work 100-hour weeks, but I worked just as hard in the business, and you kind of realize, hang on, that isn't why why I got into this. So yeah, outsourcing was really key for us. The virtual assistants and our property manager are just, they're essential members of our team. Yeah,
Mm.
I don't think there's anything else, but yeah, I think you kind of have to start with the end in mind, don't you? And as you're growing, be putting these systems in place to allow you to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do.
Yes.
And you can, it is quite easy to get carried away and just end up with this beast of a business that requires your time, energy all of the time, which is fine if that's what you like and you want. But if you're looking to do something else, it's important to kind of step back and see that.
And what were some of the mindset shifts then that you had to make in terms of like outsourcing? And because people don't always do it as perfectly as we would like it done, like how have you dealt with that side of things?
Yeah, I think it's hard, isn't it? I think for me, the having the time back was more important than everything being done perfectly. So even though that's not naturally how I am, I want it to be done perfectly. It got to a point where it's like it's too much work and it just needs to be, what is it? Done beats perfect. And yeah, just it was just a mindset shift. Really for me, Mike's quite good with stuff like that. Um, and yeah, so delegating. And I think the other thing that we didn't have at the start was processes and systems, which makes delegating very difficult and outsourcing very difficult if everything's in my head and sort of I like to do it this way. So you know, even now I'm constantly changing our processes and systems to try and optimize things. But having you know, at the start we had nothing, and now we have like a bank of videos and processes and manuals on different things within the business that just make it that little bit easier when you do step out of the business, or you know, you're overseas, for it to be able to run in the same way. At the end of the day, you know, our tenants are our customers and we want them to have a fantastic experience regardless of what we're doing. And having those systems and the team in place allows us to be able to do that.
Mm. Oh God, my mind is going in so many different directions of questions I have to ask you. I guess so. Let me just say, it's so unusual to sit and have a conversation with someone who doesn't just have financial freedom, but also has created the time freedom as well. Like those two things, there's a very small number of people. So it's like so amazing to sit and chat with you. I guess I'm interested because we found from our experience of going through that same thing that you create the financial freedom, you create the time freedom, and then you have this time and it makes you realize that there's a whole other level of how you like, we call it emotional freedom. Obviously you're reading the book, like how you feel about your life and what you then decide to do moving forwards. Do you resonate with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, I'm just gonna
That's all right.
frog in my throat. One of the things that we realized was, you know, you sort of set these goals. I'm very much a 12-week year person, so I love that book. I follow it religiously and have done since I read it sort of 4 or 5 years ago. And so we had this goal of traveling, and I literally was like, right, 12-week year, I've got what am I doing this quarter, what am I doing this week, and work really well from that. And then when you actually do it and you're there, we did kind of get to a point where we're like, well, what's next? What's the goal? What's the sort of, you do feel a bit kind of lost because, and it's such a fortunate position to be in, to sort of have a dream sort of lifestyle and then you achieve it, but then you do kind of think, okay, what next? And that's why when you initially asked me about, you know, the travel, we're at a transition period now because we've had 2.5 years of amazing travels whenever we want, and now it's sort of like, well, what's next? And you do have that, and I think, you know, you touch on that in the book about emotional freedom. And yeah, it's such an interesting topic because you don't ever really plan for when you hit the goal, like what's next. And yeah.
And I don't know, I think it's, and I do see it happen with other people as well, and it's almost like you feel a bit, it's a bit, you lose yourself, right? You're like, who am I if I'm not necessarily chasing down the next goal? And it's not really what you expect. You kind of imagine you're going to get to this magical point that you have financial freedom and time freedom, and suddenly everything's perfect. And it is a privileged position to be in, of course, but I
Yeah.
think there's so few people who truly make that happen in that way. And then also to come on and have a conversation like this, like what's, I don't know, what wisdom have you gleaned for yourself from having been through that, or are you still in the thick of it maybe?
Yeah, I think I am in the thick of it still. Um, I think for us, it's almost like not starting again. That's not the right way of saying it, but we are now sort of at a point where we're like, okay, so what are our new goals? What does our new dream lifestyle look like? Because it is going to be a little bit different. And um, again, just working with the 12-week year towards that. At the moment, it still involves travel, but it's obviously a bit more restricted. into school holidays. And we're actually looking at for next year. We were talking just before we hit record about planning for next year, and we're going to do the Scotland, the NC 500. So
Oh, nice.
we're planning to do that for Easter, and then summer, I think we're actually going to go long haul and ditch the van for the first time and maybe do Southeast Asia. So yeah, it's sort of, that's going to be very different because the van, we could carry pretty much what we wanted. We weren't living out of a backpack. So that'll be 2.0 of nomad life on the road whilst running a property business. But yeah, it's exciting. And I think you just have to keep an open mind, don't you? You never know. You hear of people that dream of the big house, the big car, and they get it and they realize that isn't the dream. And you kind of have to relook at your goals in your life and what you want and work towards the new dream, as it were. Yeah.
And you think property is still the thing, or at least it is for now? Like that's talk to me about the
Yeah.
future plans in property.
Yeah. So yeah, property, we love property. And I think we're continuing to grow the HMO side of the portfolio, but we are focusing also on diversification. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the private rented sector. And, I think I wouldn't say I'm worried, but it does make me nervous, all of the changes that are coming in. We have quite a large student portfolio, and there could be, if the changes that are sort of in the mix at the moment come in, it'll be a big disruption to that sort of sector. So I think having that diversity in the portfolio is important. We've started working with an emergency accommodation provider. So we've handed over a few of our flats in the portfolio to them. We're actually working with them to provide more homes in the West Midlands. So that's a big focus at the moment, looking at potential blocks of flats, which I know you specialise in, and commercial with flats above, etc., to be able to provide more units for that, as it's it's a sector with a huge shortage.
Mm. And it's really nice to sit in front of someone who feels like there is a genuine passion for property, because I actually think it does seem like you actually love it. Like, what is it that you love about property?
I Personally, I love the design aspect. So I love doing all of the design. And if anyone's seen any of our properties, they are quite quirky, they're bright, they're colourful, and I just love that. Sort of, I don't have much of a creative side, but I do when it comes to the properties. I love doing that. And also, yeah, just providing homes. Mike does a lot of the tenant sort of management side of things, and he just loves meeting the tenants. And yeah, I don't think when we got into property, it was about financial freedom. I don't think we ever thought about, the customers and was this exactly right for us. It was kind of like, it's a great strategy for financial freedom and also, as part of legacy and holding for the long term. But as we've grown the business, we just love it. And you'll know, working as a couple at the start, there was a lot of overlapping and sort
Friction.
of, yeah, friction. That's the polite word for it. A lot of friction. And as as the years have gone on, we now very much have our roles and it works really well. And we both really enjoy it. And I think as long as we do enjoy it, we enjoy sort of creating these homes, working with investors. We've got an event that we run. There's just so much that's come out of it. And yeah, we just until we don't love it anymore, we will continue to do it.
It's really really amazing. Let's talk more about your working relationship then. Tell us how that's kind of evolved, what the roles were at the beginning, maybe give us some examples of what friction has meant for you guys along the way and where you've ended up now.
Yeah, I think the issue we had at the beginning is there weren't roles. Sorry.
Everyone's doing everything.
Mm. So we were both treading on each other's toes. I was getting involved in stuff that I didn't really know how to do, but just getting involved, and vice versa. And it causes friction. And I think, when we started out, we were both working full time. And, I was working 100-hour weeks. Mike was a chef working the nights, really antisocial long hours. So it was a stressful position to be in, to start a new business. And then you throw into the mix starting in a new business, and it just, it was a nightmare, to be honest. And I'd love to say we took a step back and worked out what the roles were, but it just evolved over time and you kind of realize what you're good at, and what you like doing. And you kind of naturally fall into those roles. So Mike tends to he's anything to do with like maintenance, tenant management side of things. I am sourcing, and negotiating deals. I'm finance. What else do I do? And I manage the team. So I sort of manage that side of thing, manage investors, everything like that. And Mike's kind of more operations, we call it.
Yeah, no, oh, it's a really
Yeah.
nice dynamic. It seems
Yeah.
obvious in hindsight when you start to look at it, but it doesn't feel like that when you're going through it.
No, no, absolutely. And it's when you're a couple, there's emotions involved. It's not like just two business partners. You still live together and you still have to see each other every day. So it's interesting. It's funny, I posted I think it was a couple of months ago about, the fun of working and living together and growing a business. And I think I had the most comments I've ever had and messages like, oh my God, we're just going through this now. I'm so glad the end is in sight, It resonated with a lot of people.
And how did you guys handle that in the van then? Like being in such close proximity, working together, like how did you keep yourselves sane?
Yeah, so I think the key thing for us was sort of time blocking and compartmentalizing our time. So because it's such a small space, if for example, what I tended to do, and I got into a routine of doing was like blocking out for meetings on a Monday morning. So Mike would take our son off, to the beach or wherever we are, and I would have the van to myself and be able to do all the meetings, do any admin that I needed to do, and that worked really well. And then we'd work in the evenings if we needed to in the van, both on our laptops. But time blocking for me was, yeah, essential, and sort of because it's quite transient, isn't it, when you're on the road and you don't know where you're going to be or what you're going to be doing. But having those sort of anchor times in the week where I was like, I need to be in the van on my own and doing work. It worked really well. And to be honest, I still do that now we're home. I time block and kind of it's not as important because we're in a house, not in a really small confined space. But I find it really disciplines me and it works really well with 90-day planning and tracking back to, well, what is the goal for this year and making sure that I'm working towards that.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think this idea of having freedom sounds like such a like freewheeling kind of thing, but actually I've been redoing my time blocking for the next sort of year really, and realizing, gosh, just how much structure has to be in place to create the freedom. Would you agree
Yeah,
with that?
that's such a good point. Yeah, it is exactly that. I think you're right. You talk, well, by their nature, they're called time freedom, location freedom. And the freedom, you think, yeah, I can do what I want, what I fancy, when I fancy. And the reality is, if you want to, maintain a fantastic business or grow it, you have to have those systems and structures. And yeah, I know, whenever I was not doing the time blocking, I would find it quite stressful because I was just trying to grasp pockets of time to get things done. And then that's when you start not enjoying the travels and the
Everything
time
starts
blocking.
bleeding together. It sounds like it's really nice and just free. I do what I want when I want, but then in reality, you're trying to do almost everything at the same time, which is
Yeah.
like the opposite of feeling like liberated and free.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, 100% agree.
And do you have like between you and Mike like unwritten rules about what you're allowed to talk about business wise and when? Like, can you talk about invoicing in bed? Like, are there any
Yeah, we're
boundaries?
really we have no boundaries when it comes to stuff like that. We probably should, but we will talk about work whenever we need to talk about work. And we probably should have better boundaries. Sometimes we are like, we need to stop talking about work and just have dinner.
Like a
But
normal
yeah,
couple?
yeah. Do you guys kind of have boundaries on? Yeah.
Yeah, it's become there's like for us like a quite a strict line where it kind of goes from like talking about the big picture kind of
Yeah.
directional strategy is totally cool. But then when that starts to come into more like in the moment problem solving, how we're going to do stuff, it kind of like what's the word, it's like veto. It's like the other, either of us can like stop the conversation at any point and we'll
Right.
totally honor that. And yeah, nothing operational at all, like in once we're out of our kind of like working hours, like no operational chats. Like we're on Asana for like our task
Yes,
management, so
we are. Yeah.
I'll put him a task on Asana and I won't actually ask him what the question is, because otherwise it just changes the energy and the direction. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're really strict.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think that's my key takeaway from this. I definitely think we need to do that because it, like you say, it's like with the time blocking, everything just bleeds into everything else. And yeah, the boundaries sounds good.
Yeah. It's hard because you're like, it is, I think it's amazing working with your life partner, but I think sometimes, yeah, we're trying to be all these different people to each other. It's like who's the wife version and who's the business partner version, and probably even within that it's like who are the different facets of the working person. There's the CEO version and there's like the marketing director, and they're kind of like different versions. And so yeah, I probably compartmentalize those in some ways as well with our
Yeah,
relationship.
no, that's the right way to be, isn't it? I think in your book you mentioned, I think it was when you were in Bali or something, some exotic location. And you said you basically worked 9 till 1 and then laptops were closed. And that's not something we've ever got to the point of. We do kind of, we slot in time slots here and there, but I think that's the ultimate goal to kind of, I don't work Fridays. That's my kind of day off. But other than that, I could work every day, to be honest. And I think it's good to have, again, it's boundaries, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think it must be the Maldives that you're
Maldives, that was
about.
it.
I mean, I don't know how you guys found it, but like we love being in Europe with the time zone difference to the
Yeah,
UK. Like like 1 to 2 hours ahead is just like it's an easy transition, but you feel like you have so much more space somehow in
yeah.
a way that has been really good for us having perspective on crap that's going on in the UK that somehow feels so much more embroiling when you're there. Does that sound fair
Yeah,
to you
yeah,
as
no,
well?
absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's funny, isn't it? It's only an hour or two, but it does make a difference because you can get ahead or, you can, you know what I mean, don't you? Sort of,
Yeah.
you're 2 hours ahead, so you're kind of up and about before everybody else, and you can get ahead of the day and get
Mm.
things done. Yeah, it works really well.
Mm. Oh my God, I could just so many questions. I could talk to you all day. What is that? If you, what advice would you give to someone who wants to do the van life thing, be in property, have the income coming in and getting a van? What's your top tips?
Top tips, team
Hmm.
outsourcing. If you already have a property portfolio, I mean, we self-manage. So if you're not self-managing, perhaps the team element's not so important. But if you are self-managing or if you have a lot of admin within your business, absolutely get a team in place. I think the other thing is just around the goal setting. I probably, like you, meet a lot of people like, oh, I would have loved to have done that, or that's my dream to do that. And actually, if the fact that we have done it, are doing it, anyone can. And I think the only difference is that we've been very regimented with setting the goal and literally doing everything we can to achieve it. And I've mentioned a few times, for me, 90-day planning has been key in that, and sort of having an overall goal for 5 years, a year, and then breaking that down so that every week I am working towards that annual goal. I think without it, I would get very distracted. I'd sort of, my goals would change and, become busy doing things that actually don't serve me achieving the goal. So I find it focuses me. And I think, I can't remember who wrote the 12-week year book, but for me, that was a massive game changer in actually working to achieve goals and staying focused. Team, 12-week year. Yeah, I think those are the main things that basically got us to do it.
And on the van front, would you do the same again if you're going to get another van? Would you, get the exterior and build the interior? Like, what are your lessons on the van front?
Personally, I like that it's customized for us. It works for our little family. You know, we were able to create it exactly how we want it. We have looked at motorhomes, just because they are, they're slicker, they're easy. Ours is a bit, you have to turn chairs to and get a table out of the back to the front. It's a bit clunky, which you don't have with motorhomes. So we are considering that maybe in the future. But I liked that I kind of designed the layout. Mike, converted it himself. I think I did mention to Mike about perhaps selling it next year, and it's like his baby. So I'm not sure if we will.
It's
But
not ready for it yet.
not yet. But yeah, you kind of created something. And yeah, I like the van as opposed to the motorhomes. And also the interiors of the motorhomes tend to be a bit more old fashioned.
Yeah, they definitely need your interior design skills.
Maybe that's a business idea.
Definitely is.
KoMo Motorhomes.
Oh, it's amazing to hear what you guys have done, and I just really take away you're incredibly, I guess, practical about all of it, like very methodical in terms of how you've approached what you want to achieve and worked your way back to like, this is what I've got to do to get there. And then it just sounds like you just keep it quite simple. Like a problem comes up and you just find a way to work through it. And it's refreshingly simple in the perspective that you've put across, which is really wonderful for people to be able to hear.
Oh, thank you. It definitely wasn't always like that. As I say, I've become a lot more relaxed via van life. But yeah, I think that's it's a good point. I think it is really simple. I think people overcomplicate. They think that this idea of having this lifestyle means having to do so much, and actually, having those systems in place and working towards it, you can achieve it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed listening to that as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you want to connect with Kim, her contact details are in the show notes. You can email her at info@komoproperties.com, and there's also a link to her Instagram as well, where she's got access to some free guides as well, if you want to find out more about what they do. So this time next week, you'll be joined by Dom and Dave, and he's going to be talking, well, it's really Dom's episode, where he's talking about how important it is to go for the life that you want and not settle for the life that you get. An amazing, open, honest episode from Dom that I think is a breath of fresh air. So until next week, have a fantastic week ahead.